declare the meeting open. Thank you very much for everybody for attending. And we'll start with the apologies for absence.
Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, we'll do that.
She may appear, she said she wasn't feeling great. If she can, she will come.
Okay. Item 2, disclosure of interest. Disclose any interest in items on the agenda and grant dispensations. Yes.
9 Recreation Lane. North Recreation.
Okay.
And 11, access.
Okay.
On Recreation Lane, not to mention my solicitor's letter.
Yep. We have had a...
Right.
Also,
Well,
sorry. Thank you. Is that it? We have had a request for dispensation from Councillor Evans for the item he's interested in. According to our code of conduct, a dispensation can be granted if the number of members, if by allowing it, the number of members would take us below those for casting a vote, would make us quorum, but that doesn't apply. It is the interest of the inhabitants of the area, well, it's only interest to one member, but it's not really interest to the other inhabitants, so I don't think that applies.
So you repeat that, because Claire was making that much noise.
sorry, I was just getting my code of conduct. I'll do it quickly now and I'll stop listening.
So 17B is, it is in interest of the inhabitants of the council's areas, that's it's in the interest of Felton residents. And it's not only in the interest of the one resident really, so it doesn't really affect the others as such, so I don't think we're granting that. So it's only on 17C, it is otherwise appropriate to grant dispensation. So it's whether the council members think it's appropriate to grant dispensation on this occasion. I think the only way we can do that is through a vote. So what else? Sorry, yes?
What is it about?
This is the access to recreation lane for...
Well, we have no information about it.
Sorry?
Have no information about it.
No, what this is a request. Richard has sent a request for dispensation so he can stay in the meeting, because otherwise he'd have to leave the meeting.
But surely you know what it's about, is making me feel happier about things that feel not
Okay, so
What's the agenda?
the agenda number
Item 11.
11.
Sometimes I say it's leverage. Not me.
I have sent it, but it was only today, I said, I haven't seen it.
Well, I mean, it was all very well, I've many chance to look at it.
You've seen all the formal things. It's all sort of it's all stuff from before the election. So you might have had it before, it's just that it's coming from new councillors. Yes, yes, it's just that. Just reason it's because we haven't responded formally to the last citizen's letter, which was in April, because we then had the elections.
So the question is though, is do we allow the dispensation for...
Why does Mr. Councillor Evans request dispensation?
He requests dispensation because his solicitor says that he should be present, that's why he's requesting it. And, well, in fact, if Mr. Evans wants to say why he requested dispensation.
Well, because you're going to be discussing matters that are of material interest to not just me but my family. In a public open meeting, and I think it's just reasonable that you allow me to at least hear what's being said. I will hear it later because it will all be recorded, but I'd rather know now than in a week's time.
Well, Chair, in the past, another councillor has remained in the meeting when this sort of thing was being discussed, and there were serious complaints about it from members of the public.
Had that member, council member put in a request? Had they actually...
No, he hadn't asked for a request, but I'm telling you, the councillor remained in the meeting to hear the discussion, which he was entitled to do. But if or the councillor got requested to leave. There's two options. There was serious complaints.
It depends whether it comes under a category A or category B. I believe this comes under a category A because it does affect you financially. So I think this is a category which technically you should leave.
Financially or not, it doesn't matter.
But he can put in a written request for dispensation. He is entitled to do that. And that is what I'm asking, do we want to pass that or not? So as a council,
It's not on the agenda here, though, is it?
But it is because it's declaration, disclosure of interests, and then you've received, he's declared an interest and put in a dispensation request, so we have to say,
Well, but that dispensation request should be on the agenda.
but
It
it
can't
can't,
be.
it can't be, because I put the agenda out, he looks through it, sees his, whether he's got an interest, and then he has to ask to speak on it. He can't ask to speak before he knows what's on the agenda, so it has to be in that order.
It has to be.
It's an understanding of
And
It
it's
does
definitely
say-
a position that
but it
should
also-
be on the agenda.
It does, it says, it's just, it does, it says to disclose any interest and the granting of any dispensations. Number 2.
But it's very simple because we'll take a vote on it now. So all those who are in favour of granting the dispensation to allow the council to stay, raise your hand. All those against granting the dispensation and saying that we should leave, raise your hand now.
Abstain.
Sorry.
Abstain.
So I'm sorry, Councillor Evans, you'll have to leave.
Well, I shall be consulting my legal advisors yet again.
Public participation, sorry, yes.
I'm going to stick my oar in the air, I don't know if I'm allowed or not. The whole problem with this parish council is he cannot sit down and speak to one another. He's a councillor and he knows exactly what we're going to be talking about.
No, I totally see that.
But it's not, you can't because he has an interest, it's a pecuniary interest as a councillor. So unless there's a dispensation granted to him to take part, he can't take part because he's got an interest in that he could be taking part in something which would then benefit him financially.
Well, can't you sit there then?
Well,
Because then he's a member of the public.
No,
No.
because it says the code of conduct, which is county council's code of conduct, says that he has to leave the room.
Being in this situation 3 months
I
ago,
know.
it was very irritating to find out that everybody is talking about you, not knowing,
I totally understand, but that is the code of conduct.
right,
That is what we signed up for. Right, I'm going to move on, please, if you can.
Well, Chair, there are other people who have a pecuniary interest in access on Recreation Lane and on what we do on our property. So I think you need to check whether everybody has declared their interest and whether they should be present as well.
Okay, the item under discussion is to review the position in relation to your access on the lane and the Sinton.
It doesn't say that.
Oh, right. So
It says access on Recreation Lane
does anyone else want to declare interest in Recreation Lane?
and the contents of the Simpsons letter.
A question, is item 11 covering 2 points, the general access along recreation
Yes.
and back access for councillor evidence, or just the access for councillor evidence?
Well, it's not discussing the access for council evidence, it's discussing a letter from our solicitor.
It is 2
Which is
points.
relevant.
It could be read as 2 points.
There are 2
Yeah.
points. It says to review the position in relation to the access on Recreation Lane. Now, my understanding, and again, probably the bad wording, was that was to do with yourself and no one else.
Right, yeah, that's what I intended, and I reading it now, I agree that it is just a case of completion.
In which case, I don't think anybody else does have, unless anybody else wants to declare an interest in access on Recreation Lane.
I am in a clear stick here. Reading that, we need to be quite clear what it is we're going to review.
My intention is the way I believe it's written, and again, this is poorly worded, we'll hold our hand up to that one, is to discuss purely the access for the individual involved and associated with that letter. We're not discussing any other access on that recreation lane. Yes.
I certainly didn't understand the agenda item to be exclusively about our access. I thought it was, in the first place, a response to a solicitor's letter, which the council has ignored for 6 months. And secondly, about access in general along Recreation Lane and to agree the next steps. This subject has been coming up for about the last 3 or 4 years, I think.
I don't, totally agree.
So I didn't understand it as being exclusively about our dispute with the previous
Okay,
council.
all I can do is apologise for that, that was poorly worded, I didn't realise myself.
Can I suggest that you've got very good agenda and you want to fix the next time and we'll clear up?
That's the only thing we can do, isn't it?
Councillor Evans, because obviously it would affect the minutes.
So it's up to you, with your agreement, because we've got a very full agenda, we put that onto the next meeting and make it clear, very clear, or we carry on with our understanding it only refers to your property.
Well, I can't answer for our solicitor, but I don't think he's very happy that the council has failed to make any response since the beginning of April. So I can't agree to anything which affects.
Chair, can I come in there? I'm sorry, Councillor Evans is solicitor, and you're all about what happens when there's an election. So it's not 4 months, it's not 6 months, it might be 4 months, but certainly no more, because of regulations, not parish council regulations, government regulations.
Thank you. Are you happy for us to continue discussing just as the access to your property? No. So we'll postpone it to the next meeting then.
No, I'm not happy about that. Sorry, what was the first question?
That we discuss it with reference to just your access only, which is what it was intended for.
No, I'm not happy. The agenda says that you're reviewing the position in relation to access along Recreation Lane,
Okay?
including the contents of the citizens' letter.
Would
So
you like to
it's-
declare an interest then? If it's discussing the whole of recreation lane access.
I have no pecuniary, there is no pecuniary consequence.
I'm sorry, I disagree. And the solicitor's letter makes it perfectly clear why that's not the case.
What happens there?
If Councillor Evans has a problem with councillor's out his declarations, he can report it to the monitoring officer. It's not for the councillors, please.
Okay, thank you. It's for you to report to the monitoring office, it's not for us to police.
Could you repeat that?
We can't, the parish council has no control over members declaring an interest. It's for members to declare an interest, that's their personal responsibility. If
Okay.
you disagree with councillor Souter, you'd have to take that to the monitoring officer at county council.
Right. Well, I just feel sad that this council operates in such a conflictual way.
But we
Why
can't
we can't
make
have a conversation? Just seems very sad to me.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, we'll move on, thank you. Public participation. Conscious of the time, we'll go on to members of the public may ask questions and make recommendations relating to items of standing orders for the future. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Have either the Bridge Chairman, Tony Clayton, Bridge Editor and ex-PC Chairman, Stephen Walton, or Bridge Treasurer and current Parish Councillor, Anne Walton, responded to the Internal Auditor's list of questions presented in his report and resolved by the Parish Council to forward to the Bridge to obtain the information? The clerk agreed to carry out this instruction, not least to identify what legal entity the Bridge is. If yes, can you read out their response? If no, why has this information been refused?
Somebody can answer now.
I can't answer that. I know we sent the question. I have a memory of receiving a response. I couldn't tell you the contents of that checking.
We'll ask that question.
Who can you say who the response was from?
Tony Clayton, I think.
Was that a written response or?
In email, yeah. But I can't remember. I definitely sent a list of questions. I remember receiving a response from Tony, and I can't remember.
In the last meeting that I attended, I asked about whether or not something had been put in writing to Tony Clayton, and he said it had not. He said the questions you had put to him were verbally over the phone. So was there a second? Introduction to him with an email to warrant these responses, or did he respond by email to the questions that you had verbally given him on the phone?
I honestly can't remember. I'll have to check my emails. I feel that it was done by email. I can't remember.
So have the councillors received the correspondence from Tony Clayton? I thought it was part of the council's procedures that items relating to this were circulated to all councillors, as is like the solicitor stuff circulated to all councillors. That didn't often happen. So is this something else that doesn't get circulated to councillors like it should?
Yeah, no, I can't remember. There's no way to keep asking questions about it. I can't remember. It's the genuine answer. I just can't remember. I'll have to look at my emails.
No, I'm asking whether or not the councillors have received it, and obviously, yeah, they've said they haven't.
Next.
That's it.
Is it any more? Thank you very much. 4A, minutes of previous meetings. 4A, to approve as correct, recorded the minutes of the council held on the 25th of June 2021, page 47. I have 1 point, 58.4, listed as 5662, should that be 5992?
Would that work on
The item 5A, which appears on page 6 and 9. All right, point 4, the dot point 4, the printer, you've got the amended value for the printer is 5991.65, which we rounded up in the accounts to 5, you put 662, should that be 5992?
Yes.
So do you have any other points on those minutes there? Okay, so with that one change from 5662 to 5992, can I have a vote to say we approve those as the correct minutes? All those in favour? All those against? Thank you very much. 4B, to approve as correct the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 9th of July, page 79. Does anybody have anything they'd like to alter, correct, change on those? In that case, can I have a vote? Are we all happy to accept those as a true statement? All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Thank you. Finances. To receive the financial statements and budget monetary documents of 24th of August, they're on page 1013. Do you have to vote to accept that? Or is that just to receive them? Okay. Does anybody have any questions or issues on those?
There was one check. Hang on, let me find it. Oh, the games for somebody's Cllr for 226 feet.
The cemetery. It's anything from the start, basically, so it's reading materials and...
Oh, yes,
parts.
parts, and, yes, sorry.
Sorry, I would correct that to say and parts, because it...
Yeah, that's right. Parts would be much better.
Yeah.
But even sewer board is,
Yeah.
for equipment.
So with the change of that to parts, is anybody happy to accept that document? All those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? You're against, sorry.
No,
Just later. To authorise the payments, which are on page 14. List of payments. Does anybody have Any questions on those? All those in favour of approving the payments? Thank you very much. Right. 5C, to consider a donation request from the Duchess High School. Can someone just answer me a question, this is the council as a whole? It's public money we're spending, which to my mind is to be spent for the benefit of the Felton population. Now, this will help some of the children in Felton, but not the population as a whole. Are we allowed to donate public money to things such as this?
As long as it's, the expenditure has to be commensurate with the benefit. So if you're saying it's only going to benefit 2 people from the village, you obviously couldn't spend as much as you're going to benefit 200.
Okay, then, right, that's fine, I just want to make no where we stood.
I didn't know how many it would really benefit, so that's why I popped it in.
Yes,
Chair,
yes,
my only concern at this is they're asking for a minimum of £100.
Well, they're not.
I think that's cheeky.
that's not anymore,
I
that
don't
was,
think they are now, because they said that they wanted £100, but they had to pay.
Like the second letter said it was still £100.
Well, they say this, the request is the same, just without the deadline. Yeah.
Yes, the cost the same, but it's just the deadline's changed. So we got £100 to ditch.
£100 does seem excessive to me.
Well, as well.
Yes,
So if we want minimum of £100, sorry, that's my,
and mine, but we'll put that to a vote, so. Anybody else anything to say on this before we put it to vote? So the vote is, do we, let's see, so do we donate to the charity as they've requested £100? All those in favour? All those against?
Abstain.
Abstain? Yeah,
Okay, we don't have to do it
no.
Something like that.
We could ask them,
That
couldn't
would
we?
be, yes, I suppose we ask.
Yes, could you write and ask if they're correct? If they will accept this amount, what do people think is a fair amount? Would people be happy with £50?
Yeah.
All those in favour of 50, if they agree?
Yeah.
Thank you. Could you ask them to see if they're happy with 50?
And then if so, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been passed now, so happy with that. Thank you. To receive an update on the external audit.
Just to say, there has been challenge correspondence received, we need to just work through and provide a response, which I'll circulate once I've done a draft. They have given us a deadline of mid-September, but they said that they will extend that, and I'm going to try and work towards it as much as possible.
Okay. 6, policy and procedures. 6A, to adopt the property manager committee terms of reference, which is a separate document to you. Did anyone did you update this, or did you see
No,
about 1.6 in?
I did update it. So this pulls together, this tries to pull together provisions that we had in a variety of documents previously. So Felton and Bloom, responsibility for supervising the allotments, looking after the fixed spaces, some things from the previous environment group. So it's bringing it all into one place so that the committee can get on and do some of those jobs.
Yes, Lindsay?
One amendment, I suggest, mine of a definite. 5.3.2, to assess the condition of allotment gardens, etc., to include hedges.
So it would say all paths, entranceways, hedges, fences and boundaries, for example. So yeah, so if you then catch that, so Lindsay's suggesting that under allotments, which is section 5, there's a bullet point listed in 5.3.2. The last bullet point, we would say that the assessment of the condition and common areas generally, including the addition of hedges in that section because I haven't mentioned them.
You still have this 1.6, the committee to do with delegated powers to incur expenditure, it's the limit set out in these terms of reference.
But it's duplicate throughout.
Well, no, there's no powers set out, is
So
there?
take it out.
But do they not need to be able to say, so if they're going to buy businesses, they need to be able to spend it to a certain amount?
I put it under each section where I thought there was money available. So, for example, under 527, authorise expenditure on maintenance. And then I put up to the amount held in the street furniture notice board reserve funds.
Okay.
Similarly, for allotments was a bit 533 and something for 542 fell in blue.
Okay,
I think
that's fair
because
enough.
I think anything else would have to come back if it wasn't in that pot anticipated spend, it would have to come back to the council.
That sounds fair enough.
Do you want to take 1 6 out?
No, because you actually do set them out in the terms of reference. I just expect an actual financial limit, but you just set out in accordance with the problems there. Does anybody else have any other points on the property management TORs? So all those, yes,
May I just,
Chair.
4.2,
yes,
just item 4.2, just, it might make more sense with the words voting members. You've got 3 members, whereas it's the 3 voting members in terms of your meetings. You've got 2.
these 3 voting members, yes, thank you, thank you. Those 2 amendments, so we have to accept the TORs, all those in favour?
Can you say that again?
Are you happy to accept those TORs, the
Yeah.
management TORs? Yes, all those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Thank you. Councillor Spurs can be agreed to be a chair for that committee once it needs, so we just need to organise a first meeting for that. Thank you very much. To adopt the finance terms of reference, that's on tab 6, which you all have a copy of. Does anyone have any points on tab 6 for the finance? Yes.
Item 4, the principle is what's there, but I think it's a bit odd. Finance Committee will assist the Clerk and Policy Review Working Group by carrying out an initial review of the finance regulation when required. I would suggest we make that either before or after the first meeting, so that a positive time is done, that's all.
Okay.
Does that make sense? We decide now, are you going to do it before the next meeting or after the first meeting?
Probably after the first meeting.
So do you mean the first meeting, sorry, I'm lost which meeting you mean?
The first meeting of the Finance Committee.
So after that, they'll then carry out the initial review
Okay.
Yes.
of regulations. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That makes sense. Any other points? Okay. Are we all happy to accept those finance committee terms of reference? All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? No. You still need a volunteer from those that on that one to chair that, please. So if you have a- Yes. To adopt the Recreation and Field Committee terms of reference, which have been amended to remove the duplication of the provision about the code of conduct, to allow more than 3 plus reserve council members, to allow the committee to co-opt additional council members, and to remove the requirement for the Thurston Parish Council to be present for the meeting. I have a question here. As Thurston contribute towards the purchase, can we take them out as being part of the quorum and still expect them to pay?
Yes, that's where the suggestion came from. I think we have a problem because they only send one person. If they're not there, the meeting can't proceed with everybody else's. We do have a time when they can contribute on, where they can say no to expenditure because anything above the pre-agreed budget would have to go back to the two parish councils.
So they propose and they're happy with it? Okay then.
I believe so.
Does anyone else have any other points on the changes that have been identified there or suggested? Okay, in that case, I will happy to accept the Rec Field Committee terms of reference. All those in favour? Thank you. 7, standing item, sorry. 16. To appoint councillors Crum and Cuthbert as additional members of the Recreation Field Committee. Does anyone have anything to say before we put that to vote? All those in favour? Any against? No, thank you. 7. To receive reports from councillors on any meetings attended since the date of last Parish Council. I attended a meeting organised by the Sewage Plants Works to look at issues of wastewater being pumped into the river. I had a very comprehensive walk around from the team there, which identified what exactly happens and what's going on, and it showed all aspects of the treatment, including how it is monitored 24/7 at different points, but especially the point at which it is going into the river. It is monitored 24/7 when it goes into the river. It is well inside the government guidelines, and the Water Authority would face considerable fines if we broke these guidelines. So I think you can be assured that whilst it is bubbling up and it does coming out from there, it is actually at a safe standard well inside guidelines. As they said themselves, they still wouldn't drink it, don't be in any arms, there's still be microbes and things like that in there. But there's actually worse things washing off the fields from the farmers with their pesticides and they're going out there. It's well inside the government guidelines. What's acceptable?
Saying that there's worse stuff coming off the fields does not excuse what's coming out of their system.
No, what's coming out of their system is inside the government guidelines. It's actually clean water. But it says it's not pure water, as it's not been
I
fluoridated.
accept that, but hearing that it is better than what's coming, that it's acceptable, but the implication that it's acceptable because...
No, it's not acceptable. But what we're saying is, the people saying it's because of that the fish are dying, because we have no control over farmers putting pesticides on their fields.
I'm certain, Jess, that is a poor excuse by the water board to see if theirs is better than the farmers. That's no excuse at all. Their system should be spot on all the time.
It is.
It's not.
It is.
Because people have told us, they've seen this stuff coming out of the outlet.
Like I say, it is monitored 24/7.
How is it monitored?
There's a camera taking snapshots of this every 50 seconds and it reports back to them, and if it's outside of their limits, then an alarm will go off and they will then be subject to fines. So it is monitored 24/7.
That's why the water board had a meeting, because there was people
Yes.
concerned about it.
I know.
And that's why they had the meeting. And a few people thought because it was bubbling up and disturbing the water that was ground underneath, it was discolouring that, but
It's not.
it's not.
But as a side to that, they have a problem up the road here with the smell coming out of their pipes. And they blame the farmers' fields. But farmers' fields is their pipes. And we've been out them twice already. And we're going to have to do them again. Because at the minute you can't challenge it because of the amount of
That's not to do with
processed
Yeah.
stuff that's been put on the fields.
My point was I attended the meeting. I'm just letting people know that I attended that meeting.
Right.
The PC also had a meeting with the Shore and Dr. Lees to discuss the new surgery and the possibility of achieving a monthly rent income. This will be discussed later by the council. Did any other council members attend any meetings since the last date? No? You happy with that, Joe? Number 8.
Well, the rec field, but then we've got all of the sort of main outcomes of the rec field.
Yes. Recreation field, that's a committee anyway, that's not. Recreation field, purchase of toddler swing and bark. Have you all read this or do you need to read it out? So the first one, 8A, is to approve expenditure. The Recreation Field Committee recommends the purchase of the 2.3 metre swing with the cradle seat at a revised cost of £4,017 plus VAT of £83.40. We have had assurances apparently from Cllr that if the swing needs to be moved during the installation of the new play area, the guarantee will be preserved if they are contacted for either the full play area or just the relocation of the swing. I assume there will be a charge for that relocation.
Yes, there would be, but it was concerned that if we needed it to be in a different place to fit other equipment in,
Yes.
it would be left without a guarantee, but that's not going to be the case.
As long as we get them
As long as we
something.
get them, yeah.
Anybody any comments on that before I put it to vote?
Which swing is this to replace?
The toddler swing, so
What?
the toddler one with the cradle seats that the
Oh, yes.
little ones go in, we had to take it out because the posts were rotten at the base.
How do we do the next one, rotten now? Is there any assurance?
They, nowadays, the existing equipment was put straight into the ground, whereas now they put them into metal shoes, like you would with the fence posts, so that they're
Which they were supposed to do the last time.
probably.
Okay,
I mean, I know it's a long time.
now vote on that to approve the expenditure then for the purchase of those swings. All those in favour? Thank you.
Can we get a grant for that at all?
Yes, possibly, but I don't know whether we will get one quickly. I'll have a look. Because the trouble is, as soon as we approve it, we won't get one retrospectively, I wouldn't think. So,
That's the one.
Fulton track.
I mean, there's a numerous things to council.
Thank you.
Because I thought it would get by.
To approve 8B, to approve expenditure, the Recreation Field Committee recommends purchase of 35 cubic metres of soft clay grade chip from CPA Horticulture. New bark will be needed once the play area is installed. Exact cost to be checked by the clerk as the quotes given were for 25 metre cube and 40 metre cubes. Different cost per metre cubes apply, depending on the total volume. Based on unit price of 25 metre cube, the cost would be £2,273.25 plus a VAT of £454.64. It may well be lower for 35 metres cube.
I have attempted to check, but I got an out office from the guy I'm meeting with, so.
Okay.
Who is CPE now?
They're just a company, I just looked for a number of companies and spoke to them and got quotes. Cllr are forest products that we've used previously, aren't doing well anymore.
Oh,
I know.
yeah, that's what I was going to
I
say.
know. Which is what I
Yes,
Could you just clarify, it talks about softwood clay grade chip, and then it says as new bark will be needed once the play area is installed. Is there a difference between softwood chip and bark?
No, I'm using bark as a generic term. I found to my horror that there is an extremely wide range of play equipment services. Bark.
But this, the 35 cubic metres will not, is that going to be redundant when the new play area is installed?
What they will try and do is they will try and straight back anything that they think will be usable, but some of it will get damaged. We will need to, once the play area has been installed, have to top up. But we felt that it wasn't so immediate getting the new play area in that we could wait to get more bark. That's why we've gone for the cheapest option, because we thought there was no point spending any more money than necessary if we were going to have to top it up when we do install the play area.
And what's the timing still likely to be? Because it's 2,500 plus if we go for 35 cubic metres. Is it going to be weeks or months or years?
It's going to be 2022 by the time
Right.
the player gets installed. And if you go down there,
Especially if we will need grant,
it can't be left any longer.
Okay.
because we'll need grant funding for the play area, so that will add time to it.
Thank you.
so are we happy that if the worst case we have to pay the 25 metre cube cost, which is the 2,273.25 plus the VAT, that's the worst case. So then we have to spend that amount? Or yes.
As we're obliged by Rossler to get something done.
Yes. So, all those in favour of spending that amount as the maximum, I hope it's going to be lower. Thank you very much.
Hang on, we got a question.
So yes,
It was just a question about, since you're in the rec field item, usually prior to the village fair and the summer holidays, the hedge hedges get cut and the maintenance gets taken place, removing the weeds. Obviously that didn't happen because there was a complaint on the local Facebook page. I was wondering why that didn't happen, and it's only just recently been done.
Thank you. That's, well, it's not actually part of this at the moment. I'll take it.
Well, it is. It's standing item rec field. Normally, the rec field does get discussed. It has been discussed fully in past times. So,
Which hedges?
it was the hedges around the play park.
Oh, right.
They got done when we nudged them.
So that was like 2.5 months later than they normally do.
I asked, and then I chased them a number of times.
C, to consider whether it's necessary to transfer funds to the Cllr reserve fund, and if so, to resolve the amount and from where. Would you like to expand?
Yeah, just because obviously we haven't got that much in the play area fund that we've just agreed to spend. So we do need to move some funds in. Now we do have money still in general reserves, so we could just use that. Or we could move out of one of our other rec field funds. So we have got money for the user building, the multi-user building, and we have got money for the all-weather course service. The rec field committee is still intending to do those projects, but they're slightly further down the line than the redesign of the play area and obviously the toddler room, which will be immediate. So it was to say whether we need to move some money. If it's coming out of general reserves, we don't need to vote to move it because it will just be, we're approving additional spend as an overflow from general reserves. If you want to move it out of a different reserve fund, I need a vote to do that.
What was the feeling of the rec committee? Were they happy for it to come out of a different from the rec committee, or would they rather it come out of general fund?
I don't know if we discussed it.
We didn't make a decision. We didn't make a firm
Chair,
decision.
on the moving of money, which I quite agree, but because of the grants, etc., that we received for the user port, we have got to have that money there when necessary. So I don't think you should touch that fund,
Okay.
but possibly some of the others we could.
But if you wanted to just use it for the general fund,
That's fine.
do we have to have an agreement with the?
I think it would be good to minute the agreement that that's where it's coming from.
Does everybody have an objection to it coming from the general fund?
No.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. We'll just transfer it to the general fund.
Yeah,
then.
just refer to it.
9, Felton Cemetery, purchase of notice board to approve the expenditure. Felton Cemetery Joint Committee recommends the purchase of a man-made timber notice board for £619.40, excluding that. You want to expand on that, or you have anyone to have any questions on that? Yes.
I had comments made by members of the public that they were rather hoping it was going to be available for public purposes.
No, this is not the one. This is a cemetery.
This is a cemetery one.
Sorry.
Chair, the current notice board in the cemetery is the old parish council notice.
Yes.
And it is just totally unmanageable.
It's very scruffy and you can't open it.
You can open it, yes, but it is. And it takes 2, sometimes 3 people. In fact, I usually put notices in, I guess put notices in, to make sure the caretaker is there as well, to assist. If that's that.
Does anybody else have any other points before we put it to vote? Okay, all those in favour of approving the expenditure for the notice board? Thank you. Anybody against? Thank you. 10.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, is it possible to ask a question about the cemetery committee?
Is this cemetery committee in general, or is it just on the?
It's just pictures on the notice board when you get
But
On this case, I'm going to say
It's on the agenda.
I put, it was on the agenda. It's the cemetery committee purchase of notice board. That's what's listed on there. And I'm very conscious of the time. We're going to overrun on this anyway.
On the agenda item is parish representations at meetings. Hasn't there been a parish meeting of the cemetery council, of the cemetery committee, since the last parish council meeting? In which case, then anything that was discussed at that meeting is hopefully to be asked upon within the parish itself. It's relating to the bin.
Sorry?
Well, within your new format of public questions, that was allowed to be done. You could ask anything on the agenda, and it was up to the discretion of the chairman whether or not he takes those questions. Obviously, he doesn't want to take those questions, so that's fine.
Not on this occasion, I really,
No, that's fine.
I'm just conscious of the time, I really want to move on, because we're going to overrun sometimes. Number 10, 9 Recreation Lane, request to change the width of gateway access by 1 metre. We passed this for number 7, we'd already had an agreement from the... Oh, sorry, do you have to leave for this? It's not a human interest?
Well, it is,
Oh, right.
I would say it is because it affects us that.
Thank you. Yes, we already approved this for number 7, and we had a letter from the footpath officer saying there was been no problem, and I don't see it being any different on the other side. Does anybody have any points they'd like to discuss further?
I
Yes.
think we should have a drawing as to what we're going to do. I think we've got one from number 7.
Okay.
Apart from that,
Did we get a drawing?
We've got sort of annotated photos.
Right. Did you have a point?
Yes, it's been very difficult, both as a council member and before I was a council member, to know quite what the review of access to Recreation Lane for the residents on Recreation Lane was, because no minutes were published, no information was disclosed by the council. But I understand that number 9 does not have legal access to use Recreation Lane as things stand at this time. And I've confirmed that to some extent by looking at the land registry documentation. So I'm not sure we can approve widening the gateway onto a lane where the access is still in dispute.
It's his land. It's his land. I'm not even sure that why he needs to ask for the permission to do a gateway. He could, knock the whole of his hedge down if he wanted to, and make that a whole gateway, could he not? I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I think
he's doing.
Well, the 7 was widened so that you could get the car in and out safely to allow a bigger turning circle, and I assume that's why Lindsay wants to do the same for his house. But if his legal access onto Recreation Lane is in dispute, then I'm not sure the council should be encouraging him to change the width of his gateway.
It's not, his access is not in dispute because the council has previously passed a resolution to grant access to those top properties.
Oh, right.
sorry, Claire.
That's
You're
interesting.
wrong there.
It has, because we do the deeds to say that they have the access Lindsay's and the 2 opposite that have no other vehicle access.
Sorry, Lindsay's access is not where it is. The access in the land registry, which Councillor Evans has just said, is not where it is now.
No, and we did deeds with where I highlighted on the deeds the yellow area which was agreed to the current gateways. That was what was decided.
And that was passed.
That was the resolution.
Well, is there a record for the benefit of other residents and the public?
Yes.
Yes. Well, why don't we have it?
I think you do.
And if there's an exception we made for Councillor Souter, who is a member of the council, why have we been struggling for 3 years?
I've got that question to ask.
Good.
I've got exactly that question to ask.
Right, thank you.
That it was written down there, that if that has been agreed, it was before my time, but apparently the resolution was passed.
As you have seen from the letter that the Parish Council sent to Simpsons in response to the first letter you received from them, they differentiated between the different properties because the ones at the top had no other vehicle access, and the Parish Council therefore decided that they should formalise the arrangements which are to grant the access that is used because there is no other access. The property at the bottom of the lane has access from Marine Street. I'm not, I can't just, that was the decision that was taken.
Chair,
Yes.
I got an email at 10 o'clock this morning from Claire about this, and rather than read the whole email out, quite clearly says, deeds are drafted, but were not completed due to the issues with Solicitor. I think these could easily be finalised now, so are they finalised or not?
No, they're not finalised because they haven't been
So it hasn't got to be
signed.
finalised.
So,
It has been resolved to grant it. So, I'm just saying what was resolved. What was resolved was that those top properties would get a deed of access because they have no other vehicle access to the properties.
I disagree.
But I don't know how
I'm
to
there,
argue about it.
I'm not there. You've got to be careful with your wording there.
Okay,
Because you said vehicle access there, and you said,
okay,
earlier you said access.
okay. I'm sorry if it's not clear.
You've got to be very careful with your wording.
Well, Tony, the whole purpose of widening the gates is to get Cllr.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't have...
No, I'm not, it's I'm not talking access.
If he doesn't current access, then if
But then the one we just granted doesn't have current access. Number 7 doesn't have current access.
well, then that should be considered before it's granted.
As I said, it was just on his land to. So that's what I said, it was approved to approve that one, because that's what I said, there was no objection to his widening that. Why should there be an objection?
So then the question is, the parish council owns the lane. Do the parish council wish to allow Lindsay a better access into his house or not?
Okay,
And if the parish council are willing to consider that, why is his not being considered?
I agree totally.
And why was mine not considered when I'm the only one who has legal access?
Yours was considered, as I've spoken to you about
For 3 years.
Spoke to you about it.
Sure.
So where do we stand? Because before my time, apparently, there was a resolution passed which was granting access to those properties at the time.
Well, can you
Was it
produce
granting
it?
access or vehicle access?
Chair, you can't tell us a resolution was passed when evidently half the council haven't seen it. You have to produce the evidence.
Is it going to be in the minutes? It'll be in the minutes. So you
Which
can't-
minutes?
Well, from over 2 years, 3 years ago.
They were minutes published.
I'm sorry, Chair, there was minutes. I can't remember them exclusively, but they were closed session minutes. Am I right, Claire?
Yes, so they are in generic terms, but they were resolved.
But even closed sessions, you can't have closed minutes. Hmm?
They were published, but they were in generic terms because the decision that was taken was not to disclose the details of the properties being discussed. So,
But you're disclosing my property and all my legal matters into the parking in a public meeting.
Let's keep to the point, sir. Let's keep to the point.
Okay, yeah, certainly.
Can we choose to resolve this now?
Yes?
Because, to be quite honest, like, I'm not about to say to those people, no, you can't take your car onto your drive and shut off rec lane
We
to
have-
premises that are there that are utilising that at this moment. In which case, I think we just need to say, we're going to put that through.
we have, they've already resolved the parish. You would have to reverse the previous resolution. The council's already resolved to grant those 3 properties at the top access.
But if
It
you're
hasn't
not
been resolved.
resolving it, so I say, Lindsay gets to change his access point, not his point, but widen his access. I'll put that through.
And then we can discuss the other access, which is slightly different, but we'll discuss that then. So therefore, does anybody have, I'll put that to the vote, is everybody happy to pass the resolution to allow the extension of that gate by 1 metre?
What's the class meeting or a drawing being?
Oh, right, so we do need to do drawing,
Yes.
yes. Oh, sorry, were you voting or?
No, I'm not happy, obviously, because I've learned for the first time tonight that there was a resolution about Lindsay's access on Recreation Lane, or the access for number 9, but it's not Lindsay, it's the property. That's the first I've heard of it, that's the first, I think. I don't think our solicitor has been told that in all the correspondence that's gone on over the last 3 years, so I don't want to inconvenience Lindsay, and I think the idea of widening the gate is a very good one. But I can't vote for something where I haven't got any evidence in front of me to say it's necessary.
But we,
As far as I'm
before the
concerned,
council
it
votes,
should be
I'd like to
right.
see a diagram. Before the council votes, I'd like to see a diagram exactly how we intend to widen it, which way.
Do we have the ability to ask for a diagram? Does he have to give us something, or is the question, are we going to allow him, or do we disagree that he's allowed to? I don't think you need to see a diagram.
I don't think you can, but it's been brought up
Well,
as
does it
a...
go that way, or half a metre this way?
It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
Well, it does because it's opposite another drive that's coming in and out, and it might end up.
But if you're totally disregarding the legal access right to pull in anyway, if he puts the 12 inches that way and 12 inches that way, it shouldn't matter.
Well, it'll be safer,
Well, it will, of course it will be safer, so
which
on
is the main point.
grounds of safety, it's probably a great idea.
What difference would a diagram make?
Why I'm asking, sir, is because it's very close to his boundary hedge.
Oh,
That's why I'm asking.
So you just want to be sure he's going the other way from his boundary hedge? Okay.
But he won't be because he does an extension on his waterhouse. So he's going to go, but don't want to go that way towards his boundary hedge.
Could we ask Lindsay back in to explain what it is he wants to do? Would
No,
that be
you
that
can't.
solve this?
You can't.
No.
You
Fred
can't
can't.
come in and just explain and then go back out again.
I think the thing is, prefer they can do with the last one for the next week.
Okay.
We'll withdraw it.
We'll ask you to draw in the diagram and we'll defer it.
Just a flash plan.
It's loud, isn't it?
Okay. Recording that in.
Can I answer any questions?
No. Right. Is that Councillor's left?
I think he's gone to the loo.
Gone to the loo.
We've just gone to the toilet. I think the next one's going to be contentious and take a long time. Should we go to 14 now? Sorry? I'm just conscious that that's going to take a lot of time, maybe not effect, so should we go to 14 and get a review report from Councillor? Oh, sorry, yes.
it's not strictly relevant to the last agenda item, but it's relevant to the disclosure that the clerk has made to the meeting. Could the clerk please advise the council on what fees were involved in making these legal changes and who paid for it?
Yeah.
Not now, if you can do it some other time, but I'd like it in writing. This.
No, we'll go on to, we'll go on to recreation lane access. I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to read the changes for this part.
Sorry, could I retract my vote that I came before? I abstained because I hadn't read since his letter.
Yeah.
I would be happy for Richard to stay. If that makes a difference to anybody else.
I think you did.
No.
No. Sorry, Richard, if I let you leave.
Here we are, Richard.
And about.
He's gone there.
Actually,
That door's open. That door.
I thought, sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you not actually, if Richard's actually going, can you not actually just change the order of the thing so that you can stay for the rest of the parish council meeting? Because you've got these other items, and then, I don't know.
Yes, if you're happy with that, we'll just, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
We'll go to 12 then. Printed by the Bridge newsletter. To the side voted off the printed sales of the British newsletter for the sum of £998.65, being the amount of reclaimed VAT returned by the HMRC to the Parish Council. Hopefully you've all seen the letter I had from both Mounts saying that we can sell the printers to the bridge for the cost of the VAT. Ideally, I would like to see them pay an extra £2 because when they made a donation, they only made a donation for the quoted price, not the actual purchase price. So I'd like to see them pay £1,000.65. We'll wait and see. And that way the council will not be out of pocket at all. Does anybody have any points on this? Yes.
If you've had two letters from both NALC and NALC National, were they not relevant papers to the meeting that the boards should be available to the public? Well, you're discussing them, and you can't be discussed without being a relevant paper, and they're not amongst the relevant papers. So the public are unaware of what is being agreed and discussed and asked for.
Just going to find it.
And along with that, do you know what entity the bridge is?
No.
Then isn't it?
Right. So from the Northumberland now, thanks for this, for my letter to him, which was basically, you've already seen because I did copy you into that letter that I sent to NALC. The National NALC's lawyers have confirmed that there is not a problem donating the printer to the organisation, even though they are not a registered charity. The legal department also passed it through the National Financial Advisor, and I've extracted this from his response. The Council and the Clerk are quite correct in wishing to rectify the situation as a matter of priority. In my view, the bridge should be asked to refund the VAT saved, and that VAT should be returned to HMRC as VAT on the claim, which it already has. The asset should never belong to the council and should be returned to the bridge on receipt of reimbursement to the VAT and removed from the council's asset register. Although phrased differently, the suggestion set out by Mr. Cllr seems to be along those lines. Mr. Cllr was saying that basically he wanted to pay the VAT. So that's what we got from Northumberland in reference to his response from the National. So basically saying that we can sell it even though they're not listed as a registered charity. So basically, my proposal is...
And you had a letter from National?
No, he was just referring to National. Northumberland had the letter from National, he was paraphrasing the National letter.
Right, so they're saying it doesn't have to be a registered charity.
That's what they're saying.
Right, but there's still an incumbence on the parish council for due diligence that it is actually something, an entity of something, whether that be.
We're not going to solve this. If you don't sell it and get rid of it, it's never going to be solved. It's just going to stay on our asset register forever and ever and ever. So I just want to get it off our... And I appreciate it was done incorrectly. It was purchased illegally. The VAT claim illegally. But it was.
The thing is, Chair, it was legal when it
No,
was
actually it wasn't. I'll stop you there. Going back through it, the VAT has not changed. I was mistaken when I said the VAT laws have changed. They have not changed.
Oh, sorry, we checked with Arthur.
Did you have a letter?
Yes.
Right. Can I see a copy of that letter?
Well, it
Says you could reclaim the VAT.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I mean, you're correct that the law has not changed. And if this HMRC supposed letter had actually been in existence, then that would have been raised with the NALC VAT advisor last year when there was a long spiel of written on behalf of the council by the clerk, which was totally incorrect, and that would have been on that list, and it wasn't. This is a new invention, which luckily the chairman has picked up, that it was an illegal transaction, not for the first time or the second time, but for the third time. And members of the public have been called vexatious for asking questions about this, and
I'd like to apologise to them.
well, that apology, I'm afraid, is from parish council. That it's not enough. I appreciate that you're doing it, but this is a parish council issue as a whole.
Can I just ask a question on what you read out in the letter from NALC?
Yes.
That picks up on the word donation. Can you just reread what you read out there?
That's because it was listed in our payments as a donation.
Yeah, so they've repeated that word.
Let's just see. The council of Cllr quite permission for the situation, and the British wants to refund that sale to the council listed. No, all this says is that they do not have a problem donating the printer to the organisation.
But that's not what your agenda thing's suggesting.
The National Grants Law is, well, no, but they are saying,
The donation was the donation not what the original?
yeah, but they have confirmed it's not a problem donating the printer to the organisation, even though they're not a registered charity. And the legal what was passed on through the national finances have extracted this, that they should still reclaim the VAT from them. So that we can donate the charity, but we should ask for them to pay the VAT back.
But you're not donating it, are you?
Well, effectively we are. But we
Well, that's
just
not what your agenda doesn't say that.
It's
Well,
selling.
you could, well, somebody could propose an amendment to the motion and that would resolve that, please.
They pay the.
So yes, they said we could donate it to them, but they also said that we could ask for the payment of the VAT. So that, to me, it's just selling it to them. So
If we make the resolution tonight,
are you proposing amendments? Make it
Yes.
donate? Yeah. And then we ask them for a donation of the VAT.
we ask for the VAT figure.
Yes. So the resolution is that we donate the printer to the bridge, asking for a donation of the VAT figure. Does anyone have any points forward for it to vote?
I wouldn't use the donation for the VAT figure, I would just ask them for the VAT back. I wouldn't ask for a donation for it,
Okay.
because it was, you'd be told that.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
justifiable pay
So
back
the resolution is we're donating the printer to the bridge and we're asking for the VAT payment back.
on the condition that it's happening.
But then if it's on condition, it's a sale, isn't it?
That's a sale.
That's a sale, like, it's a sale. If you're saying a donation would be, we're giving it to you and we don't expect anything in return.
Well, it's right. It's right and wrong, I'm saying.
That's what it is. We do it to, as long as they refund the money.
That let enough to say that the parish council do not do it.
We do on these.
The letter just said it didn't.
No, it does say only. It said we should never have owned it.
Right.
We should never have owned it.
The parish council have had no, they've never insured it, they've never used it, they've had no responsibility for
Yes,
it. It's been completely in possession of the bridge.
The donation is the cost of the printer.
Yes.
So I think the public need to know that this council or the previous council has made a donation of how much is it?
No, the
£4,500?
council made a donation. The bridge made a donation to the council, which almost covered the cost of the printer.
Right.
So the council purchased the printer because it could get a government discount and because it could save VAT.
Yes.
Thinking it was doing a good deed for a public community, but it was illegal to purchase that because you can't do that for anyone else. It's like me.
So the bridge have paid the
cost of the printer.
the cost of the printer net of the VAT.
Yes, because we incorrectly reclaimed the VAT. We then paid the VAT back. So we now out of pocket the VAT amount. So what we'd like is for them to pay us the VAT back, so we're not out of pocket.
Okay, I'm not sure where the donation comes in then.
Semantics.
Okay.
So, are we happy that we offer the bridge newsletter the printer? All those in favour?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, that's right.
Well, we might be, is it what you suggest, 1,000?
Well, I'd like £1,000 and 65p because that covers the £2 they didn't donate as well. So we're definitely not out of pocket in any way. But as a minimum of that. Item 13, the local transport plan.
Councillor,
Yes.
number
Oh, sorry, yes. Thank you. 13, the local transport plan programme for 21-22, to decide the top 3 highways and transport priority issues for submission to NCC to be considered for inclusion in the local transport plan programme, guidance from NCC and to parish councils. Any points on this? Yes.
Yes, I would like to put this, as council's aware, there are 2 working groups going, one for the Oval and one for South Main and South View. And yes, I would like to put those forward.
Yes.
I would like to put forward hard footpath extending north out of the village. At the present there's a hard footpath from the village up to the turn from the farm, to the first farm. I would like to see that hard footpath extended up to the A1 combination, where the A1 footpaths are rather. You know what I mean.
So it's where the bus stop is, because then there's a crossover road with the other footpaths, so where the bus stop, footpath starts.
Well, I think it's more important things in the village first before you start tackling things like that, because pavements in the village need research.
This is why we need to decide what 3 we want.
If I may also, sorry, say we previously suggested a 20-mile-an-hour zone. I have had a number of queries and complaints about speeding in the village, asking what the parish council can do. Obviously, we can't do very much. We've discussed previously the speed signs, but we were told they could go on the programme.
I was speaking to the van that came around the police here, they said the only surefire way to slow people down is speed humps, and it's worked very well in the 2 or 3 villages that put them in. So my suggestion would be put speed humps down that main road to slow vehicles down.
Would that be a highway, general highway?
Yes, so that's why I said it would come under this top highways, put it as a priority for a highways issue to go forward.
Supposed to down to
Yes, well, it could be
Well,
one
I think it
of
would
the
have to be on there, wouldn't it?
Sorry?
I think it would have to be one of our priorities, wouldn't
I
it?
think so, because
Speed measures, we could ask for quite a lot under one, because that speeding, it continues all the way down, pretty much to your house where the cars park on both sides. That's what stops, that's what slows them down finally.
yes,
Don't you believe that it's looking that
Do they?
they do.
Do they?
Because especially when they want to block, because they want to try and get through quickly to try and beat the traffic and get out. So they do. So they said, this is from the police, the only surefire guaranteed way, you can put the flashing signs in, you can put a few chicanes, but we can't do that through the centre village, but speed humps have been proven to work. So that would be my suggestion for one of the items to go forward. And you want your 2?
Yes, there's a high priority,
Yes.
working groups are on, there's big problems.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other?
Just a touch away an hour speed, and I think we should go for that. Because you can get the cameras up the speaker or something in, and they can pick them up. Once they're going 20 miles an hour.
But that's like the speed humps along with a 20 mile an hour. I think speed
Well,
humps
it's
is
not going to go.
well, if you give it 20 mile an hour on its own, we're not doing anything.
Well, it can improve things in Davis Landing.
On a small street, it won't do anything down here when cars are.
But, I mean, this village has got 20 miles an hour without hardly any traffic.
We've got to make it because we need 3, so we've got the 2 there. So is it, do you want 20 mile an hour speed limit signs, or would you rather have speed humps?
I mean, signs don't make any difference.
No, so that's why I think speed humps will be the thing that make a difference.
Well, personally, I'll see the 20 miles an hour.
Sorry, what did you say? You disagree?
I know the speed humps on a hill are a very good idea, especially, in winter.
But this top end,
Oh, the top bit.
Yes.
if they're going to interfere with parking as well, would be my concern as well, because it does make parking, if it's going to take up parking area, things we've already got an issue with.
It's mainly for this top bit, but yes, it's
Is there a possibility for another traffic calm measure anyway? Because I don't know whether you can incorporate a smaller, getting towards the school, there's railings. If you haven't, I know it's on a junction, isn't it? If you have a traffic calm measure somewhere near there, perhaps it would aid the passage of children across the road, because they're only crossing one carriageway.
we've asked for a pedestrian crossing in that sort of area before. The reason that hasn't proceeded is because they have to do a traffic survey of some sort, and we asked for it just pre-COVID, and they didn't want to do it during COVID because they said the traffic patterns weren't normal, it wouldn't give an accurate result. I've recently been back in touch with them about it. They said it is still on their list. Now that traffic is resuming, school's going back, we'll do the traffic survey, and then I don't know how long it will take to get an answer on a pedestrian crossing. But the trouble we found because we wanted to keep originally the 2 chicanes, so put the new one in but keep the old one as well.
Yeah.
But there's rules about how far these things have to be from junctions, including the pedestrian crossing, how far they have to be from each other, and so on. So they said they couldn't fit the 2 in. So I think the next one would have to be quite a way up, and I don't know if that would then. I mean, they just come through it and they speed back up, don't they?
Yeah.
And so the request was that the chicane,
So what do we want to do? Is it speed?
Well, Chair,
Yes.
we have Councillor Felton in the meeting.
Yes.
He could maybe give us some advice.
Yes.
So I think, what we need to do is get highways to come out and explore the various alternatives that could take place in this particular area. Lots of people have ideas, but our highways people are the guys that know what works in certain situations. So, I think Cllr should probably write to highways and ask for some sort of investigation.
Can I just
Elizabeth
actually
first.
add?
Sorry, Elizabeth first.
A scheme I have seen mentioned on television on a programme about speeding on roads, but this was a while ago, was to make the road look less attractive to speeders. One way of that is put islands in the middle. Just the motorists seeing an island in the middle, it makes it look, I don't know, they need to be a bit more cautious.
Like opposite the place in part view, a little mini roundabout.
No, not just literally an island, just some sort of island.
Oh, right, I see, yes.
Just as part of the working groups, with the lay-by working group, the Oval and South Lane and South View, within the lay-by one, we've actually asked for and are getting a survey done. Councillor Thorne was saying that we need to contact highways, so that contact has been made.
Right,
So the idea being that they're looking at the lay-by electric points, the speeding and potential looking again at doing a crossing, and the idea is that they come to do a one-off survey. So if the group, the lay-by group, contacts Councillor Thorne with the information that we have and the contact we have at NCC, maybe he would be able to get a response from the questions that were asked earlier in the year.
thank you. Yes.
The idea of islands is interesting, but at the moment we have a lot of extremely large tractors. They seem to get bigger every year, and the trailers, and I think the islands wouldn't last very long.
Chicane is standing up.
Okay, so we've got some ideas. We don't need a decision on that today, actually. So we'll it's not after the next meeting, and we'll see if, as the leader of the we can write to Councillor Thorne and those.
Yes.
Yeah. Questions we've already got.
Chairman, before we go on, as we have Councillor Thorne here,
What's the name on the agenda, Lindsay, for Councillor Felton?
It's the next one on the agenda.
that's why, sorry, I'm seeing it and jumping the gun.
I think, so just to add on the final bit on that previous one though, I think the real crucial thing is to phrase our requests to hit as much of this weighting, scoring system as possible, because I think that's where we've previously missed the mark, that we haven't, they're measuring us presumably against requests from all parish councils, I don't know whether you've got any tips you can suggest about.
Yes, well, you know, the more comprehensive your request, and, you know, but I think it's crucial that, you know, we get highways out to discuss the various alternatives that could happen. You know, you've got to make a good case. I think it's a good case that's going to win you the day.
School children is always a good case.
It is.
Yeah, there are people as well,
Yes.
and it's quite hazardous crossing Main Street sometimes.
Trying to get as many of them as possible.
How old is old?
Well, older than me.
55 or something. Standard item 14, or item 14 is standard item report from Councillor Felton, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. County Council report. We're now 4 months into the new administration, and you know, I'm pleased to report it is going well. We have a new leader in position who is delivering. We're continuing to refurbish County Hall. Questions were asked recently about the cost of that, and to date, I think it's running at around £40 million. This is obviously a lot less than the former administration's intention to move County Hall to Ashington. So as an administration, we're quite pleased with the refurbishment, and as a working space inside, it is very efficient and fit for purpose. It is. You know, my own job now in the new administration, I'm no longer chair of the local planning committee. I'm chairman of the larger one, the strategic planning committee, that covers big applications, obviously applications over 100 houses, and applications for wind energy, mineral power, that sort of thing. One of my first applications was the British Volt application for the new battery factory at near Blythe. And obviously that was, you know, a very important application. It was a huge tick in the box for what we felt in Northumberland, an investment of 3,000 jobs. Obviously they're doing initial works at the moment, but I think initially hoped to have the plant running by about 2023 and finally completing it by 2028. As well as the 3,000 jobs, of course, there is a huge tick in the box for service industries as well. This is a badly needed investment in the southeast corner, which has been struggling for a long time. And to get these jobs in our patch, you know, we're very, very pleased. We recently had an update on what we're doing. We had a council meeting on the 1st of September there, and as regards the economy, obviously we're having an economic drive, trying to get business in. British Volt as part of that. This is the levelling up agenda, trying to help those areas that really need assistance. Second item on the economy was support rural business through Northumberland. Really important, you know, a lot of our businesses in Northumberland are very small and do need that support. Thirdly, town deals, trying to smarten up and improve our market towns. Fourth item on the economic agenda is the Northumberland line. This is the line out of Newcastle, out up to Ashington, and the applications for the new rail stations and bridges are going through strategic at the moment, and in fact tomorrow evening we've got the new station at Ashington on the agenda. Communication improvement is also a big tick. Obviously we're starting to plan the renewal of the A1 and doing some preparatory work for that. Another item that we've got on the agenda is the Moorhouse roundabout. There's also a serious intention at the moment to improve bus services throughout Cumberland as well. Under the budget finance heading, we've got the budget coming up soon, obviously savings to make, improve customer performance, trying to make sure that our land and our assets are best used. Libraries, obviously we have been upgrading libraries, especially the one in Annick and Hexham. But one of the problems is that, you know, there aren't a lot of books on the shelves, but a big grant has been announced recently to help us actually furnish the library with books. Our theatres, museums are just about back to normal. On the education front, obviously we've got the Education Strategy Board, which has been established to keep up standards, and I think we're getting there. 90% of our first schools now are either good or outstanding, with 60% of our secondary schools good or outstanding. But, you know, we do feel this is too low, and we're trying to get that good or outstanding tag up to 70%. At the moment, we're looking at new builds for Berwick-upon-Tweed, for Astley, for James Calvert Spence in Amble, and we've also had a recent announcement from Central Government recently that we've got a grant of 1.04 million for a new welding and fabrication centre in Blythe. Again, you know, looking at job creation as part of the education offer as well. Obviously, we're continuing to do road improvements, and there is also a major refurbishment of toilet blocks coming up out throughout Northumberland. We're also proceeding with the rollout of electric charging points. Under the planning heading, we're trying to deliver more affordable houses. And we're also looking at a review of the local plan. The local plan isn't in position yet, but we're already looking at how to make it better and make sure it's fit for purpose. Under the better planning heading, planning is trying to be more responsive and deal with queries more urgently. I know there's a lot of criticism of that. Under a time of Queen's Platinum Jubilee, obviously that's next year, 3rd to the 6th of June, and we're looking at waiving the cost for road closure should any villages or small towns wish to have parties to celebrate this occasion. Last time round, when we had a royal celebration, we considered using some of the small schemes allowances. Some of that money, you know, the councillors handed up 15,000 to be used for, you know, revenue, that sort of thing, to assist any village that wanted to have a celebration. Locally, obviously the north entrance to Felton, BA1 there, that scheme has been completed. You know, it's taken far too long, I apologise for this. You know, I've raised it on many occasions, obviously. But, you know, I feel, yes, it is an improvement, but probably we need to do a little bit more there to make, you know, the entrance to the village more environmentally friendly. We seem to be getting a better cut these days on our entrance than we did in the past. It's looking tidier. The Riverside Improvement Scheme is proceeding. What else? The LACs, the local area committees, we're hoping to get them out of and around Northumberland, and obviously, you know, we'd like the parish councils to engage again with the local authority. I did receive a request, an email about improvements to the recreation field. My money for this year is spent, but I would be happy to pledge £5,000 out of the allocation for 2022. That's all I've got to report, Chair. Have you got any questions for me?
Any questions?
Barbara?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Thorne, Lane Hedge, which is a big improvement, but I think you're going to have to do something because there are people parking there.
Already?
Yes.
Getting trash.
You did say you were going to plant bushes to stop people parking there.
Well, that was my plan, and that was why I referred to doing more at the northern entrance. So, you know, obviously this scheme would have to involve the permission of the parish council, but again, you know, I think something like, you know, smaller trees like rowan trees or something that are attractive and nice to look at. We want something that fits in and is not going to, you know, some native species. So, yes, I would like to come up with a scheme, obviously with the approval of the parish council as well.
Well, councillor, sorry,
Sorry, but the people that just park there, they just drive over anything. We need something to stop big vehicles driving onto it. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, small trees with stakes in, you know, that would prevent.
Or some of this, what they call it, fencing, these birds, something fencing.
Bird man.
Yes, you know, I'm not really in favour of fencing, but, you know, I want, you know, like yourselves, we want that northern entrance to Felton to be attractive and pretty. You know, I don't know that fencing is the right thing, but I think if we planted some small trees, which, you know, would act as a barrier in themselves, and, you know, those trees have stakes in, you know, that might help. But this is all to explore.
All that happened last time, we fenced it off to grass it, is it moved the parking problem further on, so we still came within the parts and we've tracked another area.
Yeah. Well, I would like to think that we can do some planting up there, all right along, attractive, pretty. This is Felton.
Yeah.
You know, we want the entrance to our village to be attractive and nice.
How long is it going to take to explore? Because this has been going on for a long time.
Yes, it wouldn't take long.
It could have been done before now.
Well, it could have been done before now, but we wanted to get the grass area put down. You know, when can you do anything? We can do it, you know, we can have a sat meeting with the parish council next week.
Yeah.
But for planting trees these days, we need to still say.
Yeah, I'll speak to Claire about setting up a meeting, okay?
Yeah.
Barbara, did you have a question?
I did, you mentioned there about improved communication, because one of the issues that I took on with it was learning through media about the proposed electric charging points that Felton was going to be part of that programme as a trial. However, it's never been brought to the parish council.
Right. I will try
And especially because there's a working group going on, and we've already mentioned electric charging points, then to find out through public media, this is already on the cards.
maybe we'll do the trial, but I will speak to the leader about the rollout of the plan and get back to you, okay, Barbara?
Again, it was just about the layback, the top road that you're talking about before.
Yes.
If the area was raised, where it was bad and has migrated to, so if the area was raised, then that would stop the majority of vehicles mounting it. And obviously, with the trees, the addition of trees, it would blend more with the surrounding because of the topography of the land. It would actually look better. So I think it would stop. You wouldn't need any fencing. putting more soil down, that's cheap, and obviously the cost of the trees.
Well, let's see what we can
So
do.
I think raising to look at.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It wouldn't just have been parish council to local communities, shrubs, bushes, trees and things, so we could have yards and yards of native stuff that could be planted up there, and that would just be us applying as a parish council.
Well, let's have a meeting.
It's further than the Woodland Trust and see.
Does somebody else have any other points for Councillor Felton?
Yeah, I've got one. Yeah. The local airfield, which I know is not in your parish, but it's our neighbour, they've submitted to the county council to amend the local plan to have a safeguarding map included in the local plan. A safeguarding map being something that goes into the planning system and restricts the height of developments for many kilometres round about. So when you're talking about the possibility of wind turbines, etc., obviously anything like that won't be looked favourably under the safeguarding map. So I just wondered where you stand in terms of whether you support the airfield in their attempt to get a safeguarding map imposed, or whether you think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, a bit of both. We've got to look at it from both sides. You know, I'm not a great supporter of the airfield. I just feel, you know, it should be under more sort of tighter control. I do. I think it's grown enormously over recent years, but, you know, I would be, you know, we've got a back for both sides, and obviously, you know, I would be supportive too of, you know, what's happening in and around Felton and Esher. You know, there has to be a meeting of minds. We've got to consider both sides. So yes, you know, I would be supporting the locals, and I'd be looking at industry, and I'm making sure that what industry wants isn't going to, you know, spoil the environment for Felton and West Thurston.
Okay.
I think you've got to look at both, sir.
Anything else? Thank you very much for attending, Friday, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor
Well, you know, I must apologise too. You know, I have been extremely busy with my day job recently. I apologise for not coming as often as I should. But, you know, hope to, now that things are settling down, hope to be a bit more better attended in the future.
We'd obviously, we'd rather see here, but we would have a request that if you can't make it, that you do at least try and give us a written report.
Okay, sir.
Read out. That would be useful, because just the lack of anything for the last 3 or 4 months is very disheartening to the members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to getting together with Claire and fixing that first meeting.
I'll email you because I'll copy Barbara in, because then she can kind of communicate to the working groups. I'll email Trevor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Item 15, update on Northumberland Police. As hopefully many of you aware, the community van did make a visit this time. They were very pleased with the turnout they got. We had a lot of people turn up. The most common thing was speeding through the village, so we had a lot of questions on. She has reported 2 crimes recorded from the 1st of August to the 6th to today in Felton. But obviously unable to provide details, but she can confirm they have no impact on the local community. Whatever that means. Nothing serious, no shit, nothing for people to worry about.
Burglary or something of the
I
sort.
don't even know if she can say that. I'll go back and ask again, but
Because you should have done
Well, it could be something like domestic abuse,
yes.
which doesn't affect the community, but obviously it's quite sensitive.
Say, this seems the standard response
It
every
does.
time.
it.
And I think, you know, that we could do some, we don't know the finer details, but just the type of.
I'll see if we can get that. I'll have a last and see if we can get that.
Okay.
Yes. Item 16, we'll go to 16, we'll do 16 and 17, then we'll go back to the other comments. So 16, correspondence received. Well, would you like to go through those? Clear?
Pretty much as it says, I don't think there's anything.
Okay, has everybody read this? Is there anybody, any comments on any of these? I have spoken, the very last one, I have spoken to the member involved, and I apologise to you for not replying formally yet, but I'll have another chat and get around to replying formally to that complaint, so I apologise. It's me being that, with all the other things. Anybody, any comments on those correspondences rather than go through each one? I'm very conscious of the time. Excellent. The date of the next meeting will be the 4th of October, again at 7:15 in the village hall. We're not sure whether we're being here or the small room.
I think the small room is reopening, so I assume that at some point our booking will go back into there as the groups start up again in here. I don't know,
You'll feel very cramped in there.
it will feel small in there.
But we'll be able to hear each other. So back to 11, if I could ask Richard, sorry, to leave.
Are you going to deal with part 2 at some stage?
Yes, so we'll ask you back for that, because
Can I get out that way?
If you go round into the corporate room, I just sat in the corporate room and put it in full house.
that's what you agree. At least I think that's what you agree. That's what we agree. Right, 11, recreation lane access. To review the position in relation to access and regulation, including the contents of Susan's letter previously received, and to agree the next steps. As has already been said, my big question is, we have a resolution apparently has been passed granting access to other properties. I know that they only have access via recreation lane, and the committee said that the other property had access from the front, but my question is, it's a bit of land that wants access, there's a gate there, and the only access to that land is from recreation lane. So why should we as a council not grant permission to access for that bit of land? If he started using access, this is my take on it, what would we as a council do? I understand we would say you can't use it, we would then threaten to take him to court, and then we would have to prove at our expense that he doesn't have the right to use that.
Well,
And well, if I'm correct, because I've had a long conversation with the history society there, the whole strip of that land, from the house to the end, was all one plot of land initially. And was it the car that was there? And they were using part of that lane, maybe only the front part, but they were using part of that lane to access their carp shop. And therefore, by default, the whole of that is
only access, no, but the only access the co-op had was past where Councillor Super's house is now.
But that is, yes, but
they didn't have any access further down the lane.
But that was to that field, that was to that event, and that was
it was to the rear of their property.
Yes. So, as the whole of that property was the whole length of that field,
But they had no particular access to the rest of the field.
what I'm saying is that as long as they had access direct lane to part of that, that encompasses the whole field.
But not all
If the only field was split up,
What, by that stage?
my understanding.
Look,
Well, the old, what's the name of the Farrell strip?
Barge.
yes.
The old Burbage plot.
Yes.
Was broken up by several owners.
Not several, that's one word.
So this is what was earlier.
At the house, there was the courtyard house and the liveries.
Yes, what the courtyard house was split up by one person.
Yeah, it was the beginning of the break-up of the Burbage plot.
No, it wasn't, because
All right, well, let me just go to...
that's not right at all.
So, what I'm saying here is, I think we probably have difficulty, unless you can show me otherwise, how we could prove he doesn't have rights, historical rights or something like that.
There's no historical rights.
But the question is, why have we granted access to the others but not to that field?
Because
We can't get into that house, it doesn't have it.
it was the original covenants. We have maintained the status quo of the covenants that were put on the plots by Alnwick District Council when they agreed to open up.
No, Lindsay, we agreed to the parish council. So
So
what happened was, the Burbage plot was already split up by Alnwick District Council doing a compulsory purchase on the west end of the plot, the side where Lindsay's house is now. And the owner at the time, Mr. Hull, who built Lindsay's house, or Mrs. Hull built Lindsay's house, negotiated with Alnwick District Council. And they agreed to accept the land at the bottom of the Burbage plot in exchange for the land which was compulsory purchase at the top of the Burbage plot. That was the initial start. And then the owners of, at the time of 26 Main Street, negotiated with Alnwick District Council to get an access into the rear of that. And at the time the Parish Council, as you see, put a covenant on it, that it was just for access to 26, to the house of 26 Main Street. What's that? Okay. Well, Mr. Evans applied for planning permission for a house.
That's
We
what
didn't
it is.
apply, just a minute. We didn't apply for the Parish Council. We just went to the planning.
Okay. Does he have to apply to the parish council? I don't know. Does he have to?
Yes, because the Parish Council owned the land.
All right.
That's where, that was what caused it.
So did the businesses that were run out of the sheds on that plot of land, did they apply for access?
Who?
For the Pinks?
Yes.
Was the people that had the photography?
Yes, yes, yes.
And was there a
They
ability?
didn't apply, the access was already there when the Kings bought the house.
Yeah, I know, but was it not, because it's not a separate entity that they were running businesses from those sheds using that lane access, which...
Yes, but they apply for it on an annual, but they have
Right,
access
okay.
grants on an annual basis.
So I want to be sure that we're not just being spiteful, in fact, he's planning permission. But I can't see why that bit of land.
I don't think it's the case of being spiteful, I'm sure that's, I'll object to that word, because as you said, the Pinks have several dwellers there had access for number 26 Main Street, not for a new build. And that's the issue. Yes, there's been planning permission granted, but it's without access. Because the access was for 26 Main Street, not for a new build.
26 Main Street includes.
And it was on an annual,
Sorry? 26 Main Street?
Should include the land and the garden.
Yeah, if that land's getting split into two, I mean, that is where everyone's got the issue with it. If the covenant was it was for access to the rear of 26 Main Street, my argument was saying, well, it's been used for running businesses which were even though people were living in 26 Main Street, was a separate entity in my sight, because it's the whole of my, childhood and knowledge of, the way that, was it Healy's had access going back down there that I can remember as a kid, is that it has been utilised for long term for things that,
No, not for long term.
okay, maybe not long term, but my idea of long term is something that I would see as being separate from the house. I think the issue is that if there was a covenant there saying the access is only to 26 Main Street, is whether or not that can be lifted to allow it, and if we want that to happen or not. that is the issue, but the thing is, why do we not want that to happen? If that is a legal possibility, that Richard can go ahead with this build, then should we be making that happen, helping make that happen? Or is there a sound reason for us not to do that in the interest of the residents of Felton, which is what we are here to represent?
Well, when you was applying for plan permission, there was another gentleman recommending for something else to do with that. We mentioned it to him, and we said, where are you going to get your drainage from? And the answer was, I don't know, that's up to whoever builds the house.
Well, this is
Sorry,
about
what's that
drainage
issue?
here.
That isn't about the access.
It's not about the
is it?
access.
And I
So
think
the question
that
is why-
I think Richard, when you look at the plans that he's put into place, he's put an awful lot of thought, an awful lot of work, an awful lot of research into this. I don't think that a man that, brands himself as ethics is going to, have a foresight over drainage and things. He's had designers in to do
The
that.
point is, though, that the parish council owns the recreation field, and the house is going to be built adjacent to the recreation field. Hence, the reason why we ask for drainage.
Okay.
We've got to think about.
Going back to-
Sorry,
Children
just,
walking down there.
Well, that would be my thought as well, it increases the ethical activity up and down the lane with children, dog walkers, people, everything.
Absolutely, the public right of way.
sorry, member of the public, yes.
Unfortunately, the parish council are hearing some so-called facts which are not facts. I had a question to Councillor Hood. He mentioned that the Alnwick District Council, at one stage, they were going to build public toilets, and effectively that site was cut in half and the public toilets were in the middle. Is that correct?
No.
At the top.
Right, so the bit at the top, you had the house at the front. You now you're saying the Alnwick District Council owned a plot behind the house somewhere.
No, the house wasn't built then.
No, I'm
No,
not talking
but-
about Lindsay's. I'm talking about the houses on Main Street.
There was an area designated.
Right.
An
So
area
then
designated.
further back, somewhere, they were going to build toilets, so they'd kept the land for the toilets. Is that correct?
Possibly, yes.
Well, you've been speaking about it as if you knew exactly what went on, so it'd be nice to have a definitive answer. Was it a separation? Was it a separation?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't see why we've got to go through this debate with a member of the public. It's the council meeting.
Because you're trying to get to the truth of the matter rather than the fantasy that things that come out.
There was a division of the plot. There was an area where there
So
was
my
going to be
question
public
would be,
toilets.
as it was divided, how did the bit at the back get access?
By the co-op, as was.
No,
By,
when it was divided, because the Alnwick District Council at one stage owned the bit where they were going to build the public toilet,
Well,
the land,
an access from the side,
the side of what?
the side of the plot.
So when we're talking about the plot, are we talking about the vegetable patch?
the,
the plot?
the,
Or
the
are we talking about-
recreation lane.
We're talking about the corner property on the lane and the strip that's now the corner property, the red gravel, Lindsay's house,
Right, yeah.
Parish Council Road, Richard's.
So that whole strip, that whole strip there, right?
That was a Burgess property, same as yours, the
Yeah.
Evans, the Woodlock.
Yeah.
I think the parish council have been describing it as Mr Hubb's Field. So the area that we have in maps is described as Mr Hubb's Field. So that area was divided at the village end. It was at the village end. There was an allocated space for public toilets, and that was
It's described in Mr Wilson's email to yourselves as an island.
an island.
And that's why he swapped the land at the bottom with the Alnwick District Council, so that he could put it together again.
And Alnwick District Council, like you say, they put a covenant on the land, but Alnwick District Council are not in existence anymore. So that covenant was taken over by Northumberland County Council.
And Northumberland County Council have given planning permission. So they can hardly be given planning permission on the one hand and then saying there's a covenant saying you can't build a house on it. And Mr Evans has already established with Northumberland County Council he can buy out the covenant for a sum of about £7,000. The covenant has got nothing to do with the parish council, and the parish council have never had any covenants over Mr Evans on that land.
Which comes back to my question, which I think yours is, why shouldn't we grant access? If we grant it for one, why shouldn't we grant it for another?
This whole argument can be solved by simply saying, do we allow Richard Evans to have access to our recreation or not? It's not as if he's trying to build a multi-storey car park. He's building on his own land, and actually, if he was to cause any damage or any destruction to the surface during the build and construction, you can sue him because it's the parish council's property. So the question is, it looks as if the parish council is being unrealistic in holding on to this access right of recreation lane, and it's making Richard's life difficult. And the parish council are able to stop it from happening, and there's no justifiable excuse for it.
I think we should be careful because Mr. Cruden has an access and recreation in his right. Tony, I have an illegal access. Yes, to the allotment. Sorry? To the allotment.
It's not legal access. Right.
Are you going to build a house on that plot of land?
I'm not so
Sorry, just look.
I could if I wanted to.
Right.
And my point that I'm trying to get through is, Richard has the planning,
Yeah.
and he has the go-ahead from county that he can build there, and it's an unnecessary boundary in my opinion. You can stop this from happening. You're doing it for other people. We're talking about Mr. Souther's access previously.
Yeah.
At one time, someone built a house there without vehicle access.
Yes.
I believe it was a chairman of the parish council actually built it.
So, yeah, thank you. Yes.
We are down to individual feelings on this, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think,
May I finish? I joined the parish council about the time this started, and on day one, Richard Evans was perfectly aware that there would be, at the best, a problem with getting access. And since then, we've been threatened with puts my back up. And these letters from Simpsons carry on the bullying tactics. He could offer an inducement to the parish council to waive the covenants. But all we've had is
There aren't any covenants.
bullying tactics.
Claire, can you confirm, sorry, it's relevant to what you're saying. Claire, could you confirm or not whether Mr Evans applied to renew his application, which has been stated in some of the letters?
Which application?
For to renew the licence.
But with respect, Mr Councillor Hood, the 1975 access arrangements
Preceded
precede
that
that.
arrangement.
So anything after that is actually irrelevant in terms of what arrangements there were for him to access the land, because Mr Hubsfield had access to it, vehicular access to it. So that is pre-1975, that the whole of Mr Hubsfield was had vehicular access. Just because most of it wasn't used when it was an entity, some of it was used, and that relates to the whole of the property. After 1975, when you're talking about these contracts and things like the pinks and what have you, it's irrelevant whether he did or Councillor Evans did or did not have renew his licences. Everything predates 1975.
Thank you. We'll just
And-
hear from Fiona and then we'll have a vote on extending. Yes, Fiona?
Just find out, Mr Evans was against the bungalow and the flat being built at the youth club.
Yeah, but that's because he wanted it maintained as a youth club. And I think that's what we were fighting for at that point. It was that, I think it was the sentiment that something had been taken away from the village.
Well, nobody, you know, we get on about this, but not a lot of people come forward. We came to the meeting and brought it up to the parish council at the time, and nobody bothered our backside about coming and standing up for the youth club. Nobody.
And I agree, Fiona, and with respect, the parish council at that time had the opportunity to list that building as a community asset, and it did not. And
That's getting off topic.
No,
Right, it's
well-
9:15. Can I have a vote to extend the meeting, please? We've been on for 2 hours. We've still got the surgery to discuss. So all those in favour of extending the meeting? Thank you very much.
so with regard the access, as a councillor, I'm aware that access, the ownership of land for Mr Hubsfield wasn't actually applied for up until last year. Prior to that area of land wasn't even in the any of the documents from the solicitors. So that land was crucial. Now that's been over a year since I think it was in March when I brought that up that they had to be contacted, and I think it was in June that some correspondence was received, and then you later got some documents, not copies of documents, but there was copies of handwritten notes. And I believe that he's still waiting to have this deeds and documents put onto the land registry. But the council have asked, I believe, on a number of occasions, hopefully, to have copies of that, but that's going on for months. Has any of that come through?
Still waiting for it? Yes, no, it's not come through. It's not come through. Right. Before we go on to discuss the contents of the letter, let's see if we need to do that. So I'm proposing that we have a vote to see whether the council are prepared to grant Councillor Evans access to his lane. If they're not, then we need to discuss our response to the letter. But I want to know why, because from my point of view, I think if we're granting one, we should grant another. So,
Can I just say something
yes.
first? As the owner of the land adjacent to where Richard and Carol want to build this building, the last thing I really want is a building next to a bit of land that I own, and for that building work to go ahead, and for a place of residence next to my small holding in an area where I want my kids to have the freedom to roam. However, I would still be in support of this and Richard and Carol, because I think it is the just thing to do if there is not a real legal reason for it not to happen, and for us not to be able to support that.
So if we have a vote to see, first of all those in favour of granting access to Councillor Evans along Recreation Lane? All those against?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Two. So what happens there? 3 against 2, does that pass?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That means we don't have to worry about the letter, reply to letter, we can grant him access along with the others. Thank you very much, all. Hopefully that's that complete now.
Sorry, can I just ask something?
Yes.
So, in respect to the other houses which do have access from Main Street, but also have access along Recreation Lane to the rear. So, for example, Councillor has discussed the co-op. I live in the house which used to be the co-op, and that's been accessed at the rear by vehicles for time memorial. And obviously, we've been there for almost 20 years, and I think the people beforehand also had access to the rear. I understand that's being discussed by the council in terms of what approach to take with respect to that access. And do we know when that will be resolved at all?
Wasn't your plan that we could apply and we would get apply to have the access?
Yes. That's what I wanted to. So
Is this, was this resolved?
No.
But in essence, your property was part of Mr Hubb's field, was the front
Yeah.
end. So in reality, you have had access, and it will be part of those documents that'll come through. So
I think we've got a prescriptive easement access anyway, because it's been unchallenged for a long period of time. But I think it's still being discussed by the council.
Okay, so I think that you'll need to bring that up as an item for us to discuss with the council, but
Yeah,
again,
garage that leaves off that bit.
Well, we can only access that across Long Recreation Lane and turning into the bit where the red gravel is. So you're not,
right.
you haven't currently got
I
a
think
plan.
we'll have to check. Yours may be one of the ones that was under this agreement on the closed meetings to have a deed
I'm just
for.
gonna, I'm gonna look.
I think it was in relation to Lindsay allowing him access over the red gravel. But in essence, Lindsay has, because he's, well, yeah, but it's back to this business about Mr Hubb's field, and in my opinion, that your property's built on Mr Hubb's field, so you have access, as does this gentleman here.
Yeah. So we've got another meeting just to make sure it's covered.
Right,
So we'll discuss that one probably at the next meeting.
thank you.
Right. Part 2. Resolution to the public. Before I read this out, the Cllr and the doctors have made their position clear. And from my point of view, I see no reason to close this meeting again because they need to know how we feel. And closing it is not going to help that public. But it's been requested to put on the agenda, so I'm going to read it out.
The reason I put it on is because I think it's literally a take it or leave it, and that's a vote. If it's a yes, no vote, I think fine, open. If there's any discussion about our position and our negotiating position, it needs to be closed. So that's the, and I don't know, it's not put on the agenda.
I don't even think we need to close it, but there we go. But we'll put it up to. So the Felton Parish Council may resolve to pass a resolution to section 1 brackets 2 of the public bodies and ministries to meetings at 1960 to exclude public and press due to the confidential nature of business to discuss, which is commercially sensitive. All those in favour of closing the meeting? All those against? So all those in favour of closing the meeting? Sorry, that's 2. All those against? Thank you. The meeting will remain open. To agree the solicitor's proposed fees for work relating to the transfer of land.
That was by email, wasn't it?
Yes.
I was just that I had it in the minutes because I know we sort of sent it round.
So you should have all seen the email, and that was just for his initial quote. I can't remember what it was. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah. Any other objections? So if I put that to vote, we're all happy to vote for the proposed fees to be paid. All those in favour? Yeah. Thank you very much. To consider information provided by developers, and Dr. Leeds at their meeting with members of the Parish Council, in particular proposals put forward and the statements made by the developer and Dr. Leeds. To summarise, the Cllr have said there is no money for ground rent, but they will still pay a one-off fee. Initially it was listed as £15,000, but they did make noises from Andrew that they would be willing to go up to £20,000. And basically that's where we're at. I don't think this,
Chair, I wasn't at the meeting with the Cllr, but we've got the least indication that there was something to do with a core rent.
But the peppercorn rent would be £1, isn't it?
No. She told me what Dr. Horner said. Dr. Horner was prepared to pay £100 or £200 a year.
That would be a peppercorn rent.
Yes.
no, that wouldn't be a peppercorn rent.
You talked about Dr. Horner considered the peppercorn rent.
When we brought it up at the meeting, we did discuss the peppercorn rent at the meeting, and it was mentioned it's a nominal fee of £1.
No, she said that's what she felt.
That was what Andrew.
That's what it would usually be. A peppercorn rent is a peppercorn. But at least it would establish the principle that we were getting a ground rent.
And that we own the land.
Yes, yes.
I read the notes of the meeting, and it was good that you had the meeting. Could you give us a feeling for A, the mood, particularly from Assura, and secondly, it's all very well for their chief negotiator to say there's no scope for ground rent, but did he produce any evidence? Did he produce a budget for the scheme for the 20 years? You know, were you convinced that that was the case, or are they just still trying to shoot a line?
As I said, I think it's still in the emails. If it was down to me on my own, I would turn them down and hold them to ransom. But it's not down to me on my own. We're here representing the members of the council.
Yeah.
And so many members of this parish have said to me that they want a surgery as a priority. My gut feeling from that meeting is if we carry on insisting for a ground rent, we're not going to have surgery. That was my gut feeling. And that's all I was saying. Like I said, it was up to me, I would hold to rent, but that was my gut feeling.
But they didn't produce any evidence for their claim that...
Just the fact that the cost, their PID, which we can't prove, is extraordinary, but their PID says it's a 1.1 million bill, you know, so they're only going to get that back over 20 years, £50,000 rent.
No, I agree. And if you look back at all the snippets, if you like, we've heard, we've got the Freedom of Information minutes that came out about meetings with the NHS in December. Dr. Lee's position has always been, well, no ground rent. And in fact, back in December, they were suggesting they would be given the land.
At least they agreed that we will maintain the land. They also agreed that we could put as many clauses in as we like on that land. And they're responsible for the upkeep of the land. They said they would take the whole of it, because that was a concern that we would still have to maintain something. They will take the whole of it, and they will maintain the whole of that land, which is obviously less expensive on ourselves.
Well, actually, they wanted to give it back to us as part of the memory garden or a sensory garden or something like that, which meant that we actually were then going to have to do it.
Yeah.
We're a bit sneaky on that point. I still think we should have some sort, even if it's telephone rent, £10 a year, it expresses the principle that we own the land and that the rent is there, and then in 20 years' time, when there's no more bill repayment, we can negotiate a realistic rent for that land.
I agree with the peppercorn, but I think the peppercorn, as they said, will be £1. That's what.
Well, something 10 is unfair at this point, you know.
The paperwork will have, the whole agreement will have us as owners.
And I still think it gives you a stronger bargaining position in 20 years' time, I'm sure we could all have money plus, and then they're just going to do what they like with it. And we have to have some of it as well, because...
But it'll be a 125-year lease, so unless we put in the lease that we can renegotiate in 20 years, and whether they agree to that, I mean, that's
So that could be a codicil that we put in. I think we have to make some effort, not just to roll over, because he wasn't foolish, let's be honest. When he said, how did I feel after the meeting? They were shysters. That's how I felt. I went away and I felt, no matter what we said, no matter what we did, they didn't care about the village at all. They were seeing it as an easy way to get surgery. They even said, well, we're just buying a little bit of land. That was their stock response, we're buying a little bit of land.
There isn't a little bit of land.
No,
Well, we know that.
There isn't, but I agree. What the village wants is a surgery, and in honesty, going through it all and looking over it all, I'm quite happy. Well, I am satisfied to accept £20,000 capital rent, covenants on the land, one of which is that Northumberland County Council has declared a climate emergency, and I want that building built to that specification. And I would be satisfied with that.
Well, I think they'll do
They'll
that.
not do that, because that will cost them more than £1.1 million.
No, I think they will do it, because that's the way that the Cllr operates. If you look at their annual reports and their documentation,
But
I think it's a great company. I just think their negotiator is not a good person.
Originally, when we started thinking about how much to charge them, you did basically a calculation of how much it cost the village, or how much wasn't being paid into the council tax, and you said around £270. So if they give you the 20,000, then it's just about 75 years worth of
Yes.
council tax. So,
Yes.
you know, we have managed to get them to pay something towards
Yes.
it. And questionably that, you know, the houses that are built may not last 75 years. But, you know,
I want doctor's surgery to last longer.
but it's getting something, it's getting something back for the use of the land, which is key. But the critical thing is to get the surgery built. And, you know, these negotiators, it's their job to back
Yes.
to a corner and
So, yes.
Sorry, yes, I would agree with what you said, and certainly I've spoken with several people in the village, putting the scenario out. And it's like you say, the priority seems to be from residents, that the surgery, they do want very much. I agree with what Gemma says, you know, we can go for the clauses, the agreements, and yeah, I think we should go out for the 20 grand and not 15.
Yes. So, well, the resolution in that case is we try and ask for the £20,000, we put the clause in, but one of the clauses we need to try and ask them for, I'll come back to you. We need to ask for rent renegotiation in 20 years' time once the project is paid for itself. Would they be happy with that?
Chair, I said from the very beginning that I think the most important thing is that we have a surgery in the village. I wonder whether it would be appropriate to ask John English Jones on his opinion, having given us some quite useful advice that fed into those discussions before we proceed to make a decision.
Yes, you have.
English Jones, on his opinion, having given us some quite useful advice that fed into those discussions before we proceed to make a decision.
Yes, do you have anything to?
I think, I mean, it sounds like you're towards the end, almost towards the end of the line on it, really, and you might just have to make a decision on it. I mean, it's a big company, Cllr. It's GP, it used to be GP owned, probably is still GP owned. I suspect at the end of the 20 years, they're just going to hand it over to the local partnership, is what they will do.
That wasn't there.
No, that wasn't what was there before.
What
From
will they
the
do?
meeting, they were in this for long term and they want to continue
They said they would be looking to issue another,
licence.
go into another lease with the doctors.
Yes,
Right, okay.
that's what they said anyway.
I think they were sort of calculating on a 2 to 3 cycle of leases before they moved on.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Because they are getting a very good deal.
Yeah, they are getting an extraordinarily good deal. I mean, the thing is, they'll play on the fact that local people want a surgery and they don't want like a big surgery built in another town, which people find very difficult to get to.
Yeah.
They have got very limited, apparently very limited options on the Widrington site, that
Yes.
particular surgery. So they do desperately want somewhere new. I think, you know, if the groundswell of the view in the village is you want a surgery, I think you might just have to accept the offer. But as Gemma says, put lots and lots of covenants on
Yes.
so that they build it in the way that you want it.
Yes.
The reason why it's so big, such a big build, is because they want additional consulting rooms in there which they can let out to get more income for the doctors, to Northumbria Healthcare and whatever. So they'll be making a fair amount of money.
Massive amount of money.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lindsay, yes.
Your resolution that we include various covenants, I suggest we don't get too tight on at the moment. We answer Dr. Lee's email,
Yes.
which is simply, are we prepared to do it for a ground rent, for a peppercorn rent? And the answer is yes.
I think we say to them, we're prepared to enter into a long leasehold for the 125 years for a capital payment of £20,000 for a peppercorn rent and subject to covenants as to be agreed between our solicitors and yours, because then
Yes.
that's what we need to keep open.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Which is literally the heads of termship talking, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the negotiation will continue through the solicitors as to, you know, our solicitor has said he will suggest covenants to put in there. We can build as many protections in as we want.
The meeting tonight, the essential thing is we keep Dr. Lee going forward.
Yes. 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 Oh, yes, just go ahead.
It's the entire piece of land being utilised by the new doctor's surgery.
No, not according to the plan, but they will maintain the rest of it.
They'll maintain all of the land.
Yes.
Sure, will take over all the land.
Right.
They will take over all the maintenance, but their plan doesn't involve building on all of it.
No, but it's the maintenance, because obviously
Yes.
20 grand won't go
Yes,
very
and
far.
that is something he agreed to.
Yes,
in the
yeah.
meeting. He agreed that they will take on the maintenance of the house.
And they're going to be the leaseholders, Assure will be the leaseholders.
Yes.
And can we have evidence on how that land is maintained? As in, how it's planted?
Is it wild or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
They just mentioned, did they not say something about planting, that there would be,
Sensitive.
no,
Well, they talk about us doing it in the centre of East.
Well, they even know that to cover it in tarmac.
did they not ask, did they not ask, and they said something like that you would get a planted, it would be a planted scheme, because that would have to be approved as part of planning.
Yes.
Did they not say that?
I can't, I haven't got that.
Well, what I'll say is that the covenants need to cover that as well.
Because that, it's again, you just don't want to cost the parish
It's
council.
not about cost, but it needs to be sensitive, so.
Have they put their planning application in?
No.
Because
Probably
we're
they've got
waiting.
it all ready to go, but haven't done it because they're waiting for us.
They didn't want to pay the fees for this.
For new developments, including commercial, you have to offset the damage to the environment
So the lots of
with some sort of massive algorithm. So presumably, if the plan hasn't gone through yet, they'll have to adhere to those new guidelines.
But can that offset be made locally rather than by?
Has to be on site.
It has to be on site, right? Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, Chair, the planning department are very sympathetic towards new surgeries. So I don't think they have such a strong, as John said, after meeting stringent things. Right, they're very sympathetic to.
we'll see.
Be an interesting question to ask. Whether we would ask planning about that. Whether environmental development would be a category a must, or whether they can do it.
I think it needs to be a must under our agreement.
I think it needs to be a must. Yeah.
Regardless of what their standards are.
So what have we got, Claire? Can you just read it out again?
I don't even know. We are agreeing
25 minutes.
125 years at a peppercorn rent and a capital payment of £20,000. Covenant to be agreed with the solicitors. Because that will include about, change, it's things like change of use, that they would have to come to us for change of use and all that sort of thing. And then we wanting to put in about the rent review at this point, or do you want that?
I think we want to put it in now, because that's going to stop it. So after 20 years, once they've taken.
I think that's not in trouble. We don't tread too heavily at this point.
We agree, and then it's part of the discussion of the terms of the document, isn't it?
Okay.
You just keep things moving forward at this point.
So with those items there, has anyone got anything before we put that to a vote then? So with those items there, the 125-year lease, peppercorn rent, £20,000 outlay, and we put some covenants
And I'll put
agreed
in
by the
about,
solicitors,
yeah, and I'll put in about maintenance, because he did mention that as well, didn't he?
and we'll send that to them as our, so all those in favour? Anybody against? No? Hoorah. We've already discussed the next meeting, we've discussed that, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.
I'm going to look at the item.
Oh, can you do that?
Well, you can raise it, but we can't take a decision, Lindsay.
No, we're not.
The hedge cutting down Recreation Lane, done by the contractors recently, is a mess and should not be paid for. Must be clear.
Put that in the letter here, is that?
Correct. As you're aware, we had our hedges perfectly squared off last year, and whoever cut those hedges, so you've got a square wheel or something, there's now on my side of the hedge, which was before diaphragm, is now like that. It's disgraceful.
Okay.
The notice board, the voting notice board.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah, you may as well speak now rather than mine, because you write it in.
The cemetery, I was going to bring up the cemetery, the waste disposal area is an absolute eyesore. It is full and it is covered in nettles. It's been reported before.
Yes.